Welcome to the video recording for StoryCorps. This is going to be about learning more about individual and storing the information for StoryCorps. I have with me my fiance Christine, and basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be asking her some questions today and see what we find out. Have you ever lived in any other states besides Arizona?
Yes.
What
I,
states have those?
I lived in Rhode Island, New Mexico, and Florida.
Excellent. Uh, with Florida, how long did you live in Florida?
1 year.
1 year. And what years or how long ago was that?
It was 2009, 2010.
2009, 2010. What was your favorite part about Florida?
I would say probably Key Largo. It was about 35 minutes from where I worked, and could drive down there on Friday night after work and sit on a pier and have sushi and drinks, and it's a peaceful, quiet little place that feels like you're in another country.
Oh, that sounds amazing. Uh, Tell me one interesting story about your time in Florida.
It's actually two times. While I was at work, it's where I worked was Homestead, Florida, so it's right at the base of the Everglades, and it's kind of middle of nowhere. It's right before you get on the bridge to drive to the Florida Keys. And twice while I was there, they came over the intercom and said, "Please do not go out to the parking lot right now. There are alligators in the parking lot."
Oh, wow. That's crazy. Uh, what made you decide to leave?
I was there for 1 year for an internship for school, and they did have opportunities to stay there for work, but Florida was not home, and I wasn't crazy about living there.
Excellent. And you mentioned Rhode Island. I actually didn't know that you lived in Rhode Island. Uh, can you tell me a bit more about that?
When I was about 19, I moved there and lived with my grandma for about 3 years, and I got my associate degree while I was there. And I lived in my grandma and grandpa's house.
Oh, wow. And how long were you there?
3 years.
3 years in Rhode Island.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's amazing. And did you have any exciting adventures or anything that happened while you were going to school there and living with your grandparents?
I wasn't as adventurous as I am now that I'm older, so I didn't travel as much in that area as I would like to. But I did always, on the weekend, I'd go down to Newport, Rhode Island, and have coffee on the beach down there. And it's a beautiful place with these old historic mansions and lots of, I don't know if they're seals or sea lions, but they would be on the pier while you're drinking coffee.
So if you had a chance to go back to Rhode Island, would you? And what would you want to do while you were there?
I would, just for a vacation, I wouldn't want to live there because of the snow, and then the humidity in the summer, but I would like to see where I lived and see how it's changed, and I would like to have some of the food again. I have really, really good seafood. They are known for quahogs, which I've never found anywhere else.
What is that?
It is like a giant clam. They're larger than clams. They're good size, and they stuff them with like bread and seasoning.
Wow.
And they're stuffed quahogs.
That sounds very interesting. It sounds like you've lived in quite a few places. You mentioned Florida and Rhode Island and New Mexico. How long did you live in New Mexico?
I lived in New Mexico for 1 year.
Another year. All right. How long ago was that?
It was right after Florida, so 2010, 2011.
Oh, okay. And what was your favorite part about New Mexico?
I don't know if I have a favorite part about New Mexico. I'll try to think something really positive to say about New Mexico. Santa Fe's beautiful and very artsy, and it's a beautiful place if you want to go for a relaxing weekend. But beyond that, it is very small town, very rural, and the mountains and scenery aren't nearly as beautiful as they are here in Arizona.
So, did you have any interesting stories from your short time in New Mexico?
Um, interesting story from my time in New Mexico. I found out that cars, the temperature gauge goes to negative. I saw -7 degrees. It was very cold there. And on the road I had to travel to work, I saw tons of wildlife. And I saw a mama bear and 2 baby bear cubs one time. And then a lot of times I saw deer and the larger ones, which I believe are elk, and lots of different wildlife.
Oh, I love wildlife. That's amazing. What made you leave?
My residency was up, and it was a job that I could stay. And I stayed about a month over my year, but I was looking for a job back in Arizona and actually got offered a job here in Arizona. So once my residency was up, I wanted to move back to Arizona.
Oh, fantastic. You know, as we kind of mentioned here, you've done a little bit of traveling and whatnot. It is my understanding that you like to travel in general. When did you first realize this was something that interested you?
Probably end of my bachelor's degree, beginning of grad school. I had a lot of friends in high school that got to travel, and I didn't get to. And I always wanted to go to Italy. That was number one on my list. I knew I always wanted to go to Italy. And so finally I was in a position where I was able to save a little bit, and I got a little more adventurous. So I just decided to do it and booked a trip and made it happen.
Oh, wow. That sounds definitely exciting. So that kind of leads into my next question was, where was your first trip outside the country? So was it Italy, or was it?
Yeah, it actually was. It was right as I was finishing grad school. So that was my graduation present to myself, and flew into London and spent 2 nights in London, and then flew to Italy and spent 2 weeks in Italy.
Oh, wow. And what was kind of the highlight of your trip in Italy?
The coolest thing I got to do in Italy was actually take a cooking class and get to learn to make pasta from scratch and made tiramisu, and then we got to eat all the food that we made.
That definitely sounds amazing. What was something that you weren't expecting on the trip, or that you hadn't prepared for, that you came across while you were on your trip?
They say that Americans are very like the New York hustle and bustle. I didn't realize just how much more fast-paced our lifestyles are than some of the more rural places in other countries. When we were heading back to Sorrento from a tour of the Amalfi Coast, and all the traffic came to a stop. And it was on that scary road that you see in Amalfi in all the movies, like the 007 James Bond movies. And so it's 2 lanes swerving by each other, and traffic came to a halt. And so we had a private driver, and as an American, my first thought was, oh my goodness, how long is this going to take, and how much extra is it going to cost us? Because now it's going to be delayed. And people start getting out of their cars.
Right.
And so he gets out of the car. He's like, come on. And so we get out of the car, and nobody's asking what's going on. Everybody's just walking around and talking. And next thing you know, somebody pulls out a cooler, and everybody starts drinking, and everybody heads down to the beach. And no one here, I feel like we would be honking, we would be yelling, or maybe trying to figure out what's going on. And he's like, oh, somebody just found out there was a rock slide. It's going to be like an hour. I was like, okay, well, so what do we do? He's like, when it opens up, we'll go. Otherwise, go down to the beach. I'll come get you when it's ready.
Oh,
and he was
nice.
very laid back about it, very nonchalant. Nobody's upset. Like, you didn't see one person yelling or screaming or like, this is BS, and the stuff that you would expect here. And people be like, somewhere to be, nothing. So we go down to the beach. Some people offer us some beers. We sit there and we drink and wait. And then somebody comes around. Somebody's like a loaf of bread, and everybody's just sharing. And then when all of a sudden people start hanging back up, apparently somebody got the go-ahead, everybody gets back in their cars and leaves. Never once was there a horn honked or anybody throwing a fit. And so then when we get back to the hotel, We're about an hour and a half to 2 hours later than our tour time with our private driver was supposed to be. And I've got the money ready and I'm waiting for him to tack on some ridiculous surcharge for the extra time. And he says 300 euros, which was the original agreed upon price.
Oh, wow.
And I'm just shocked. I looked at him, I said, we're late. He says, not your fault. And so I gave him a really generous tip, but I was really shocked. It was nothing like I expected to experience. It was really nice to see the laid back culture like that.
That sounds like an amazing side adventure. I can't even imagine the differences there. Uh, what is your dream trip and why?
My dream trip is to go to the Galapagos. One, because I love nature and wildlife, and two, because it's not someplace that's always going to be open to tourists. They have, in order to be able to accommodate people without destroying the environment, you have to go on one of the pre-approved charters, and they only allow so many people at a time, and there's only certain ships that are allowed to go there because they're small enough not to impact the natural wildlife. But that's always been that's my new dream trip after Italy.
So you mentioned that they might not always be allowed.
They have talked about stopping people from going there to make sure there's no damage done, but instead they went with these restrictions that are now in place so that when people do go there, nothing is destroyed.
Oh, that's intense. Is there a place that you have traveled that you would want to visit again, and why?
Probably all but one place.
All but one place. Okay.
So I've been to London twice, and I still haven't seen everything there is to see. So I would always go back there. Italy, I spent 5 days in Rome and still never saw the Trevi Fountain. And there's many more things I'm sure that we missed. And I also didn't get to go to Milan, and I'm sure there's many other things in Italy I could come up to see. Plus the places I went were just so amazing, and the people were amazing. I'd love to spend more time on the Amalfi Coast. That was probably cut short. I didn't realize we would want much more time there, which I would, and didn't get to explore Naples at all. And then Canada's so massive that the parts of Canada I saw were amazing. But there's so much more of Canada to explore. I only got to see the Niagara Falls to Toronto and back, that area. And then in the Bahamas, I only got to see one island. And I'd like to snorkel there and do some other experiences there. And then Portugal, I got to see Sintra, Cascais, which is considered their kind of French Riviera. It's their beautiful, ritzy vacation area. And so I didn't get to spend much time in Lisbon. And then I also didn't get to see the Azores, which is actually where my father's from. And then Spain, I saw the West Coast, so I haven't seen the East Coast. So one of the things I was really looking forward to when I went to Spain was having the real paella. Well, come to find out, the coast I was on isn't where they have paella.
And what's paella?
So it's a rice dish that they make saffron rice in these big pots, and there's all kinds of seafood in there. Clams, shrimp, oysters, all kinds of stuff thrown in with the big rice. It's one of the things I was looking forward to having in Spain. But when I got there, somebody told me you're actually on the wrong coast for paella. So I saw like Barcelona, Mallorca, that area. And it's the other coast where paella is famous. So I didn't get to see Madrid, that area. And then, Gibraltar is the country that I probably wouldn't go back to. It was nice for the short trip I had there, and I got to see the caves and the monkeys, which are kind of the highlight. But I felt like, one, it's a very, very small place to see it. Gibraltar is very small. But two, I felt like everything was very much commercialized and touristy. That nothing was very natural, and it was very dirty.
So that's definitely a place you would never go again.
It's no place that I would be like excited to go back or would purposely go back to.
Gotcha. What is the next trip you're hoping to experience?
I have several. It's hard to narrow it down to one. Top of my list is Greece, and then Scotland and Ireland, and Alaska. So I have three.
Oh, yeah, definitely. What are you looking forward to seeing or doing in Greece?
Greece, it's the ancient ruins. I love history. It was one of my favorite things about Rome, seeing the Colosseum and the Forum, and so Greece is as rich in history and ancient ruins as Rome is. And then I also, just the pictures of some of the places in Greece with that blue water that doesn't even look real. I'd love to see with the white buildings, and it doesn't even look real. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, definitely. I've seen some pictures that look like that. And you mentioned Scotland and Ireland?
Yep. Scotland, I would love to see the castles. It's supposed to be some amazing castles, and just the architecture there and the rolling hills and the Scottish Highland history and the clans, and just a really rich area. And then Ireland, I kind of want a Guinness.
Yeah, the Guinness factory, right?
Yep.
Absolutely. I've heard it's up in the sky. You know, it's not like on the ground floor. You actually go up to the top, and I've heard that you had supposed to be a great view from up there.
That sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, you mentioned kind of that whole region and the Amalfi Coast. You mentioned that a couple of times. What is that all about? Can you tell me a little bit more about the Amalfi Coast?
So, I'm not sure exactly what completely constitutes the Amalfi Coast, but we stayed in Sorrento, which is kind of right at the beginning. When you watch the Italian movies where you see that crazy road where it's 2 lanes and everybody's passing, it's on the coast, that's the Amalfi Coast. And so it is this road built along the cliffs and the ocean, and all along it are the ancient light posts. They are brick, and at the top they can be lit by fire. And they were the warning system all along the coast if Italy was going to be invaded.
Oh,
And
wow.
so this whole coastline is set up with those, and it's a road now. And we saw Positano, which was made famous in the Under the Tuscan Sun movie. So Positano, and then Amalfi, where there's this beautiful, beautiful cathedral. It's very different than any other cathedral I've seen. It's almost more like a mosque. The designs and atmosphere looks more like a mosque than a Catholic cathedral. And it's the best chocolate gelato I've ever had in my entire life.
There you go.
And then next was Reveille, which was actually really cool because it's off the beaten path, so it wasn't as touristy. It was much more everyday people and real Italian culture. And they actually have a church there that has this crucifixion carved out of a tree that the Catholic Church has actually deemed a miracle. The tree has been cut down and carved into a crucifix, and it's in the church, and it's not deteriorating the way the wood should.
Oh, wow.
And so it was really neat to see. They consider it a miracle, and it was really neat to hear the story and see it there and see that it really isn't deteriorating.
So it's not decomposing or anything, and they didn't put anything special on it to keep it intact? Oh, that's amazing.
And so that's the part of the Amalfi Coast I got to see was Positano, Amalfi, and Reveille.
Now, with the light posts you mentioned, are they gas? Were they some sort of wicks back in the day? What kind of...
I would imagine they were wood and tree stuff and whatever would get a big fire going.
So you're saying like the top piece is not just like a small little...
No, it's these
light thing?
huge spires, and then in the middle they would light the wood and everything they had there, the kindling, and when one would get lit, the guards at the next one would see that, so the guards at the next one would light theirs and would go all along the coast to warn that there was an invasion.
So the light is not at the top of it, it's kind of like in the middle of it. Is that what you're saying?
In the middle of these giant pillars,
Yeah.
exactly like in Lord of the Rings.
Oh, okay.
In one of the Lord of the Rings movies, you can see them light it, and then you see them keep lighting them over the mountaintops. That's the only place I've seen it used in a movie that it might make more sense if you watched.
Oh, yeah.
But
I
historically,
have seen
I
that.
remember reading about those and thought it was a really cool ancient warning system. And then to see them actually still standing and all along the coast, and you're like, oh, it makes sense how that would work now.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, definitely. I want to say thank you for joining me here today and sharing our story and learning a little bit more for StoryCorps. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
You're welcome.